Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, back at it again with What If Deku Was Johnny Cage? Yes, I'm finally here with it, my favorite Mortal Kombat character, Johnny Cage. This man is an absolute beast. He's a mad lad. He's filled with confidence and I absolutely love it. So if you guys are as hype as I am for this What If, make sure to go down below and, hit that like button for me, seeing as you already know this What If's going to be good. But since I don't want to waste your guys' time, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so where we're actually going to start our story off is in the point of view of Inko when she's in her early 20s before she even meets Hisashi to, well, conceive Deku. Anyways, let's just say that in this version of events, we're actually going to have Inko being a model from Japan. See, she had recently started learning the language of English, and she decided that she's going to go to Hollywood to test her luck out and see how things pan out. Of course, Inko's, well, let's just say that where they meet is going to be a bar, and as for Deku's father, we're just going to have it so that essentially he is a bit of a movie star. Yes, we're going to have Deku's father be a little bit of a movie star. Think Will Smith. He's just going to be a little bit of a comedian, like funny guy, in some pretty cool movies. You guys know the drill. But yeah, he's going to be a movie star, and of course, he's going to finish, wrapping up one of his movies. This is where we're actually going to have him walk into a bar, and this is when they're actually going to meet each other. See, Hisashi would walk into the bar and see Inko as he begins to flirt with her, and Inko would begin to flirt back as they would begin to talk to each other a little bit, every now, and they would, get together a little bit. After this, they would end up going, to a hotel room, and, a couple months later, Deku's born. Of course, Hisashi is actually going to be a movie star who is very attractive as well, seeing as if Inko liked him, you already know my boy Hisashi out here. So with that being said, we're now actually going to have Hisashi and Inko basically keep talking to each other, and Hisashi, of course, stays by her side. They end up basically having Deku a couple months later, and we're actually just going to skip on over to the day where Deku's born. See, in this version, Deku is essentially going to look like Johnny Cage everywhere except for the hair. And he's essentially going to look like that you see in the thumbnail. Not yet, but that's what he's going to look like in the future. for now. So for the next following years, of course, we're going to have Deku basically growing up in a wealthy environment. He's going to grow up having riches and fame. He's also going to have, the best schooling. And he's going to grow up taking a lot of martial arts classes. Seeing as in this version, I'm actually not going to make UA a high school. I'm actually going to make it a college to give Deku a little bit of notoriety. Of course, this is when we're actually just going to skip on over to the day where Deku's in high school. And of course, he had just finished not graduating. Let's just say that he just got into high school. Of course, our boy Deku loves fighting, and he loves the movies that his father's in. He's usually always in, let's just say, fighting movies. And he actually ends up teaching Deku a couple of his moves. Of course, with that being said, he actually goes off and ends up learning a bunch of different, styles of martial arts. Every single fighting technique and style that Johnny Cage uses is essentially what Deku's going to have at his disposal. Of course, we're going to have everything pretty much pan out as it usually would, and we're essentially going to have Deku going through his normal events, not in Japan. He's going to be growing up in America, and he's actually going to grow up being a pretty famous movie star. At this point, he's taken a couple of roles for movies, and his name is infamous. At this point, he's about, let's say, 15 years old, and Deku's definitely making a name for himself without, his father or his mother helping him out. Of course, they're always there in his life, and they're always, pretty supportive. They're pretty great parents. Oh, sorry about that water bottle. But they're pretty good parents, and, they're pretty supportive of Deku. With that being said, we're going to have Deku basically grow up, getting a little bit of an ego and a little bit of a complex. Sort of how Johnny Cage does. See, nobody's ever really tested him. And of course, we got to have Deku have an OP quirk. That you see Deku right now, you see that image of Deku, that sexy ass dude? Yup, that's essentially what Deku's going to look like for this series. My man Deku is going to be out here with this green hair, and he's actually going to have the same powers as Johnny Cage. He can basically like do the shadow launch, like the shadow kick, and throw like the fireballs, or not exactly fireballs, but they're more like energy, and he's also going to have a little bit of an aura that coats around him. A very interesting thing, to say the least. Of course, he's going to train those things along with his quirk, and we're just going to skip on over to when Deku's about 16 years old. Yeah, let's say Deku's about 16 years old. At this point, Hisashi and Inko had, pretty much been, starting to develop some problems. And Inko and Hisashi would start slowly end up losing that connection that they had between themselves for the last couple of years. Inko would grow tired of the media and the fame and everybody always being in her life. She honestly just wanted to go back to how things used to be, before she ever had to deal with any paparazzis, or she, had anything like this. She wanted to, basically go back to normal. But when she told Hisashi about it, he of course refused. This is his lifestyle. This is what he worked for, and he's not exactly going to change it just because Inko feels like she wants to go back to being a normal girl. They end up having a big fight about it, and of course, Inko ends up leaving him. She returns back to her hometown, which is essentially where she used to live, and she ends up renting the same apartment that, well, the version of Inko has in the original canon. Now, this is when Deku would pretty much hear about all this stuff, and he'd be pretty saddened, as his mother would ask him if he's gonna come with her, and he would look down as he tells her he can't. He's built his whole life over here, and he doesn't want things to change. As, she'd be saddened by this and just leave. She would have lost her son and, well, her husband. But nonetheless, she still would leave, knowing that, Deku would be just fine growing up with Hisashi. Probably gonna end up being just like him in a couple of years, if not already is. And she just takes off with her bags and goes home. She's pretty saddened about it, but, well, Deku can't be bothered to, go with her. He's not ready to give up this lifestyle. He just got it. That's how he feels, at least. If she wants to, give this all up, then that's fine. But Deku's not ready. He wants to keep living like this. This is what he's already used to. He's used to the fame, the money, the glory. And nothing's going to stop him from that. With that being said, we're now going to basically have the next 2 years go on, in which Deku slowly just has some guilt eating at him. For the last couple of years, he just feels guilty for the fact that he let his mother leave, and he didn't even tag along with her. His father would have been fine, and it's not like he's ever even around. He's always busy doing some movie sets and basically doing his own thing, gaining more popularity, and ever since Inko left, he's always been bringing different women to the house. Of course, Deku can't exactly be one to judge, seeing as he does the same thing. And we already know all the girls are all over this man. Look at him. Look at this man. Look at that thumbnail image. You can't tell me that's not clean. Anyways, with that being said, though, we're of course going to have Deku essentially going through the next, couple years. And slowly it's going to begin to eat at him until he just can't bear it anymore. He would decide to tell his father that he's actually going to go visit his mom for a while, and that, he won't be back for a little bit. As Hisashi would say that that's fine, he would tell him to come back whenever he feels like it, and he would send Inko a text basically letting her know that her son wants to go see her. She would immediately read it and say, "What? He's coming?" She would instantly get excited. She would be happy that she's finally going to be able to see her son after 2 years, other than on the big screen. She would proceed to basically smile a little bit, and this is when we're going to have Deku taking a private jet over to Inko's house. As of course, we're then going to have Deku arriving outside no, scratch that. We're actually going to have Deku arriving by plane, obviously. And as soon as he does, he lands at a little bit of at the airport. As he decides to take a train close to the area where his mom's at, and he starts looking at his GPS, basically trying to find what street she's at, as he's never been in Japan. Of course, he knows the language, seeing as he grew up with his mother, and she obviously would have taught him it, as well as Hisashi, seeing as she wanted him to be accustomed to her roots. And of course, Deku would know what's going on, as he would ask different people for help, and of course, they wouldn't exactly, be able to point him too perfectly, and of course Deku would get a little bit of help, but he would end up relatively just going over and walking down a path. See, in this version of events, we're actually going to have it so that the All Might incident with All For One doesn't actually happen as soon as it actually does in the original. Instead, we're actually going to hold it back as long as, I don't know when All Might would actually injured, but let's just say that the same amount of years that Deku, met All Might before the injury, that's the amount of years that fight was waited out until. So basically, yeah, All Might was a little rustier, and that actually leads to the same injuries. With that being said, though, of course, we're going to have Deku basically walking around, as out of nowhere, from a tunnel behind him, Deku can sense something as he jumps in the air and he hears somebody say, "Give me your body, kid." At this point, Deku would be, leaping in the air, and the sludge villain would be staring at him as he says, "Perfect." As he would lunge up into the air, and Deku would say, "Oh, no, you don't," as he would begin to basically charge up an energy ball. As he throws it straight at the sludge villain's eye, sending it, back to the ground. Screams in pain, going, "Ah! Give me your body, kid. I didn't know that freak was in town." As Deku would say, "I'm not giving you a thing, and you better get out of here before I have to make you feel some pain." As the sludge villain would basically begin to say, "You're not doing anything to me, kid. That was a lucky shot." As Deku would proceed to look at the sludge villain and say, "You don't say." As he would proceed to look towards him, and he would proceed to basically coat himself with this green aura. As he would use his shadow kick, and right as he lands it, the sludge villain would begin to chuckle as one of his arms extends out and it begins to rush at Deku's face. As before Deku can even get hit, All Might would come in out of nowhere saying, "I am here! Texas Smash!" And of course, we would have, the sludge villain be blown away. Sorry for any headphone users if I just, defiled your ears, but, you'll be fine. Anyways, with that being said, we would then have Deku basically looking towards All Might as he would then say, "Hey, thanks for that." As All Might would look towards Deku, and he would proceed to say, "Wait, you're that movie star from America, Johnny Cage, right?" As we would then have Deku basically looking towards him as he would put his glasses on and say, "The one and only." As we would have All Might basically chuckling to himself, saying that he actually enjoys quite a lot of his movies. He's a pretty big fan. As we would then have Deku saying, "Oh, really?" And he would proceed to say, "Yeah, I can give you an autograph if you want." As All Might would say, "What? An autograph?" And we would then have Deku basically take out a pen and a paper. As All Might would say, "Kid, do you know who I am?" As Deku would say, "Yeah, of course, you're All Might, right? You're the symbol of peace of Japan." As All Might would say, "Yeah, but not really used to this, reaction from people." As Deku would say that, I guess he probably expected for him to freak out or something, but Deku's not really too into heroes. He doesn't really, watch too much of that stuff anyways. As we would then have All Might basically look towards him as he would say, "Huh, I understand." As he would proceed to look towards Deku, and of course, we would then have Deku basically telling All Might to basically, have a good day and thank you for helping him. As All Might would jump off, and for convenience sake, let's just say that All Might drops the sludge villain. And who is it going to land on? Katsuki Bakugo. Yes! Katsuki Bakugo! Anyways, we would then have, Deku basically walking home as he basically ends up stumbling over and hearing an explosion. He would hear that coming from a distance, and he would proceed to basically rush on over there. He says, "What's wrong?" And some of the girls around there would begin to say, "It's Johnny Cage!" As we would then have reporters turn to him and basically take their attention off of the sludge villain. As Deku would say, "Yeah, it's me, but what's going on?" As everybody would say, "Oh, yeah, some kid is stuck over there. He's badly injured." As Deku would say, "Huh, badly injured, you say? What's going on?" As he would look over a bunch of people and see the sludge villain throwing cars at the heroes. As he would then look towards them and see a boy with blonde hair. As he would decide that he definitely got to step in there. They would proceed to basically say, "Why are you here?" As Deku would say, "No time for that." As he would proceed to basically grab his jacket. And yes, we're going to have it so that Deku's wearing exactly what you guys see in the thumbnail right now. And he would proceed to throw it off as he's wearing nothing but the pants and the little gloves on. As you would proceed to see Deku basically rush over at the sludge villain. As he would throw his strongest energy ball straight at the sludge villain's face. As it hits the other eye that wasn't injured. And the sludge villain would then scream in pain. As he says, "Damn rat, I thought I took care of you." As he would say, "I guess you didn't." As we would then have Deku basically rushing at to grab Bakugo, as he would grab his arm and yank him out of the sludge villain. And as that's happening, the sludge villain would of course throw a hit at Deku, as Deku would dodge it, and he would proceed to basically put his both hands in front of him, as he would launch a huge green energy beam straight at the sludge villain's face, basically blinding him permanently. As this would actually give All Might enough time to basically jump in there and say, "Texas, smash!" As of course, All Might would save the day, change the weather, and Deku would then basically be, covered in paparazzis asking him what's he doing here. Is he planning to become a hero? What's his quirk? What's going on? What's he doing in Japan? As Deku would just be chuckling, rubbing the back of his head as he puts on the jacket. And of course, we would then have him say, yo, chill. I'm just here to basically visit my mother for a little bit. I don't know if I'm too into the idea of becoming a hero. Not something I'd really do myself. As they'd proceed to basically look down and say, man. As of course, we would then have Deku basically just jumping away from them and basically dodging the crowd. As we would then have him basically trying to find his mom's directions. And of course, we would have All Might run around the corner saying, "Wait, young man!" As he coughs out blood, and Deku then says, "Huh? What?" As, we would then have All Might basically say, "I am..." As we would then have Deku getting in fighting position, as he would say, "If you're impersonating All Might, I suggest you leave now, because if you don't, I'm going to put you in a body bag and send you straight to jail." As we would then have All Might basically say, "Kid, it's me." As we would then have Deku saying, "It's really you? Prove it." As he would proceed to show Deku the autograph, and he would say, "How do I know that wasn't a fake back there either?" As he would say, "Kid, I changed the weather. Who else do you know can do that?" As Deku would say, "Fair point." As he would say, "So why? Why are you like this, All Might?" As All Might would look towards Deku and explain the situation of his injury, as well as explaining one for all. As Deku would basically widen his eyes and say, "What? It's not how quirk works. You shouldn't even be able to pass down quirks. What? I've never heard of anything like this." As of course, we would have All Might then explain more to Deku, and Deku would begin to realize what's going on. As All Might would begin to look at Deku and ask him to be his successor. As of course, we would then have Deku look towards All Might as he would say, "I'm flattered. The #1 hero of Japan wants me to take his power? Thanks. It's a great offer, but no thanks, All Might. I think I'll be fine with nothing but my power. Plus, I'm not planning to become some great hero anytime soon, so I think you'd be better off, trying to train someone else or something." As All Might would say, "Kid, but you're..." As Deku would say, "Not my style." As he would say, "But, if you want, I'd be willing to get your number down. Maybe we can hang out one of these days. Go get a bite to eat." As All Might would say, "Alright." As of course, we would then have Deku basically write down All Might's number on his second phone, and he would proceed to say, "Yo, wait, All Might, before you go, can you take me to this house? I'm having a little bit of a tough time finding it." As All Might would say, "Oh, that? It's right over there. It's 2 blocks down." As Deku would say, "What? It was really that close?" As All Might would say, "Yeah, it's pretty easy." As he would proceed to basically walk over to Inko's house, and of course, we would then have Deku walk inside. As he would say, "Hey, hi Mom, I'm home." As we would then have Inko basically turn the corner saying, "Izuku, you're home." No, we're gonna change something a little bit. She would say, "Jonathan, you're home." As we would then have Deku saying, "Mom, I don't like being called that." As she would say, "Oh, yeah, right, sorry. Johnny, you're home." As of course, we would then have Deku actually having a little bit of a name change. His name, instead of Hisashi Midoriya, we're actually going to have Hisashi be named Hisashi Cage. And of course, that means we're going to be having Johnny Cage as, our boy Izuku Midoriya. Now, this is when he would proceed to basically talk to his mother for a bit, and she would proceed to basically tell him how much he missed him. As Deku would say that he missed her too, and that he just feels awful about, not going with her when he had the chance to a long time ago. As she would say she understands, she gets it. He was young back then, and he didn't really understand how things really were. As at this point, Deku was about 18 years old, and he would proceed to look towards his mom as he says, "Well, I'm going to be sticking with you for a while now, Mom. Don't you think we should probably get a bigger house?" And she would say, "What? No, I got out of there to basically dodge all the fanciness and all that fancy lifestyle. After a while, I realized it really wasn't for me. I mean, probably for you it was, but I didn't really find any happiness in it. What really made me happy was raising you and being with your father, but things changed, Izuku. Oh wait, no, things changed, Johnny. As, I'm going to be referring to this version of Deku as Johnny, Deku, Izuku, Midoriya, all three. If you can't keep up, then you're probably not very, bright, but most people can probably keep up. But with that being said, anyways, of course, Deku would basically be talking to his mother a lot, and we would then have Deku essentially just going through the motions, having a good time with his mom, and basically just catching up with her a little bit, asking her what she's been up to. And hold on, guys, give me a second. The audio might sound a little crappy, but give me a quick second. All right, yeah. All right. Anyways, of course, we would then have Deku basically talking to his mother and catching up as they begin to fill each other in on how things have been going. And she would say, "Your movies have been a hit lately." As he would say, "Yeah, they've been doing pretty great so far." As she would proceed to look at Deku and say, "Yeah, that's the thing." As she would proceed to look at Deku and say, "So, have you gotten any stronger?" As Deku would look towards her and say, "You know it." As they would proceed to have some dinner, and the very next day would roll around as All Might would send Deku a text basically telling him that if he could meet him at Dagoma Beach tomorrow. As Deku would respond that not really somewhere he wants to go, how about they go grab some breakfast. As All Might would basically be like, well, alright, as he's basically trying to convince Deku to be his successor. Of course, we would then have All Might and Deku go to IHOP. I don't even know if Japan has IHOP, but also, sorry for any bird chirping you guys may hear in the background. Not sure if you guys will hear it, but you guys might. So if you guys hear, some annoying noises, just kind of ignore it. But with that being said, of course, we would then have Deku and All Might having some breakfast, and All Might would begin to basically talk to Deku, explaining to him things, talking to him a little bit, and trying to basically convince Deku to become his successor. As Deku would say that he already told him that's not really his style. He doesn't know if he even wants to become a hero. And that's really not something that's on his list. He should probably go get somebody that would be more reliable. As All Might would tell him that he's probably one of the most reliable people. Look at how he handled that sludge villain. Those pro heroes over there, they couldn't have done half as well as you did. As Deku would proceed to say, I guess you're kind of right. And of course, All Might would end up convincing Deku to train him. Not give him his quirk, but he can train him at least. And we would then have the next 6 months basically consisting of Deku and All Might training together, with Deku hanging out with Inko some more and basically getting to know each other after the 2 years that they lost. As of course, we're actually going to switch perspectives. See, I'm actually going to be introducing Mortal Kombat into this. Of course, your boy gotta do it, seeing as it wouldn't be Johnny Cage unless he's in that tournament, and he ends up fighting somebody like Gorill and doing the Nutcracker. So most of these characters, they better watch out for what's to come. Anyways, with that being said, we would then have, the next 6 months go around, and of course, we're switching over to the point of view of Shang Tsung. See, at this point, Shang Tsung would have essentially been morphing himself, going around the world, basically informing people of his plan. At this point, he's talked to people such as Redestro, Overhaul, Muscular, Dobby, Toga, Spinner, Twice, people like that. He's gone around basically recruiting any and all warriors to fight on his side, the side of Outworld, to basically help them conquer the Earth realm. As of course, we would have a lot of them basically declining him, but after Shang Tsung showed them his power and if they didn't basically cooperate with him, he would take their soul. As of course, we would end up having them cooperate nonetheless, and they would basically be told that they're actually going to be taking part of the tournament in a couple of months from now, by the time of the UA Sports Festival. But with that being said, we're gonna keep going. Anyways, of course, we would have Deku basically going through a couple of moments, and this is when Shang Tsung would get word that one of Earthrealm's fighters will actually be somebody known as Johnny Cage, as he would actually send some of the Tarkatans to basically go out and basically proceed to find where Deku lives and kill him. As of course, we would have Baraka. Yes, I'm only going to be introducing three characters from Outworld. Of course, I got to introduce my boy Baraka. Definitely got to throw Goro in there. And your boy has to throw Kano in there. Come on now. Kano is a slapper as well. And maybe I can throw Cabal in there. That's 4 extra people. But yeah, those are the only real characters that are going to be added into this version. You know, nobody else is real. Oh yeah, Raiden's going to be in this. Just letting y'all know. Anyways, with that being said, of course, we would then have Deku basically wrapping up a day of training with All Might, as Deku would basically be taking the train home, and he would proceed to basically call his mom, as she wouldn't pick up. And that actually seems very strange for Deku, seeing as his mom never ever declines a call, or almost never, doesn't answer him. As Deku would proceed to get a little worried, but he would decide that, there's nothing wrong with her. She's pretty tough. She's tough as nails. Nothing would have happened to her. As he would end up taking the bus home, and he would end up, train, and he would end up basically arriving there. As Deku would walk up the stairs, he would see some footsteps, and he would proceed to see a man basically rushing out of the building, as he would have a deformed face and some claws on his arms. As Deku would, not really pay too much attention to that. Baraka would have ended up throwing the blood off of his, his claw things, and he would have ended up running away from that area, not really noticing that Deku was the fighter that they were talking about. He thought it was Inko. He ended up killing Inko. Deku would rush inside, walk inside slowly, as he would see Inko's body laying on the floor. And this is when he would proceed to actually drop to his knees, as he would say, Mom, wake up! Mom! As of course, we would have her being limp. She can't move. She can't talk. As Deku would say, no, this can't be happening. Mom, get up. This is not real. As he would proceed to essentially call an ambulance, and they would rush over. As Deku would begin to think, how could this have happened? As he would remember that man that he saw rushing out of here. As Deku would immediately throw his phone at the ground and rush out of there, as we would begin to chase him. And this is when Deku would proceed to basically be blinded by his rage, as he would chase him into an alleyway, and Baraka would basically stop, as he would take his claws out and say, what are you doing following me? As we would then have Deku saying, you killed my mother, wasn't it? It was you! As this is when Baraka would begin to say, so it was you who was the real target. As he would proceed to look towards Deku, and he would proceed to ask him, what his name is. As Deku would say, the name's Johnny Cage. You better remember that name, because it's the last thing you're ever going to hear. As he would rush towards Baraka, but before anything could happen, thunder would strike the ground as Raiden would appear. And he would proceed to hold a hand out towards Deku, as he would tell him that the time is not now. He's blinded by rage, and if he tries to go in now, he will die. As we would then have Baraka basically looking towards Raiden, as he would say, what are you doing here, God? What are you doing here, Raiden? As we would then have Raiden look towards him, as he would say, you are out of bounds right now. You need to return back to Outworld. Do I need to remind you of the terms of the tournament? As we would then have Baraka looking towards Deku and basically telling him that he'll be back. As of course, we would then have Raiden basically talk to Deku, as Deku would say, what are you doing? You got in my way and you let the killer of my mother get away. As we would then have Raiden look towards him, as he would look down to the ground and say he's sorry, but this is not the time. As we would then have Deku looking at Raiden, as he would say, not the time? Not the time? What do you mean it's not the time? It's always the time. That thing just killed my mother. As he would say, what did you say? Outworld? How do I get there? Tell me now. As he would look towards Raiden and grab him by his, his collar. As he would say that if he doesn't tell him, he's going to send him 6 feet under. As we would then have Raiden tell him to calm down. As, Deku would say, no, I'm not going to calm. As Raiden would hold his hand on top of Deku's head and, basically put him to sleep. As we would then have Deku waking up a couple of hours later in a different area. He would be inside at the beach. The beach in which he had always been training with All Might. As we would then have Raiden basically explaining the situation to Deku, telling him that this world is in grave danger and he's one of the only people who can save it. As Deku would look towards Raiden and say, what are you talking about? As Raiden would begin to explain the tournament of Mortal Kombat and what it entails. The Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn, is trying to come in, and if we don't stop him, his forces will destroy the world and enslave all of your people. As we would then have Deku saying, what are you talking about? Even if that's the case, the heroes can handle it. That's none of my business. as we would then have Raiden tell him that is his business. He was chosen. As no, he's not going to have that little, Mortal Kombat mark or anything like that. But, he's strong. So, we're not going on no movie lore since that movie was complete garbage. But anyways, we would then have Deku looking towards him as he would say, "What are you talking about, old man?" As he would begin to explain more to Deku. And Deku would slowly have things be pieced together. As Raiden would begin to explain to Deku that the person who killed his mother, his name is Baraka. And if he wants to avenge her, then he has to fight in the tournament. Because unless he steps in, more people like that will die. And the number will only continue to grow. As Deku would basically grit his teeth and he would begin to say, "So, what do I do anyways? You said that thing could have taken me out even if I tried." As Raiden would look towards Deku and say, "Now he can. But with some training, you may just be able to win this thing." As Deku would say, "What are you talking about?" And we would then have Raiden basically holding his hand out. As Deku would stop, and this is when, Deku would have actually not remembered, but today, All Might was actually scheduled to actually be there and talk to Deku and train to him a little bit. As at this point, it was 6 months and 1 day into the training, and we would then have Deku basically looking towards All Might. As of course, All Might would come in and he would see a man with like a weird straw hat and some lightning coming out of his eyes. As he would wonder what's going on, and Deku would begin to fill All Might in. As All Might would say, "What? A tournament? Is this true?" And Raiden would begin to show All Might visions of the past, the previous warriors who had all lost and faced and lost in the tournament, and the previous 9 Mortal Kombats. As All Might would realize the severity of the situation, as he would look towards Deku and tell him that if he's willing to accept the quirk now. As Deku would look towards All Might and say, "Really? You're gonna ask me this now?" As All Might would say, "With this power, it'll almost be guaranteed your victory." As Deku would look towards All Might and say, "But," as All Might would say that, if just take this and eat it. As Deku would say, "What are you talking?" As All Might would proceed to grab the little piece of hair and shove it down, Deku's throat. As Deku would eat it and say, What was that for?" As All Might would say that he just passed his quirk down. As he would say, "That can't be true. I didn't willingly let you." As All Might would begin to explain to him that he can force the quirk onto others, and that he doesn't have the same strength that he had before. He can't participate in the tournament, because if he did, he would just be a liability. As of course, we would then have Deku looking towards All Might as he would basically stare at him, and slowly he would begin to realize that All Might's right. As he would look towards Raiden and say, "So, how much time do I have left?" As Raiden would begin to explain to him that he has approximately 6 months to get ready for this, as it's all going down in the next 6 months after the USJ attack, of course. And your boy definitely got to cover that. The Nomu getting the on the the Nomu getting the nutcracker. That's all I'm saying. But anyways, with that being said, we would then have Deku essentially looking towards Raiden as Raiden would say, "We begin now." As Raiden and All Might would spend the next 4 months of the 10 months of training to essentially teach Deku how to fight and make him more versatile, as well as learning how to control the power of One for All. At this point, Deku could use about 35% of full cowling. And for those of you who read the manga, I'm actually not even going to be introducing any of the 7 quirks that come along with it. And sorry for those of you who aren't manga readers who just got spoiled, but wasn't really nothing too major. With that being said though, Deku would spend the next couple of months essentially training One for All, as he would end up, basically learning how to use about 35% by the end of the 4 months, since his body was already used to 20, and he ended up having to spend 1 month basically learning how to properly use it and channel it through himself, as well as the rest to train his body and get it ready for the power of One for All, as well as it would have also increased the power of his quirk tenfold. His energy, before it used to be like a fire, but now it's like an aura that coats him. It increases his power, and his energy balls are extremely more powerful, as Deku would end up becoming more and more powerful over the time. And during this time, All Might would have actually ended up taking Deku in and letting him crash at his house, as of course he would have actually ended up putting in a good word for Deku and saying that if he wants he could go into recommendation, as of course This version of Deku, I'm saying that this version of Deku would definitely accept going in through some recommendation. The easier the better. So Deku, instead of going through the normal thing, would actually be doing the, normal stuff. And instead of Deku actually saving Uraraka, we're actually going to have it so that some other character actually ends up coming in swiftly and saving her. This person being Melissa Shield. Yes, you guys knew it was coming. Or for those of you who saw my community tab, you guys knew what was going on. Anyways, with that being said, we're actually going to basically not really cover the little, the recommendation test, seeing as it doesn't really seem like too much. They just go through normal things and they're basically guaranteed to get in. Of course, we would have Invisible Girl basically not get into 1A, as I think she's actually not Invisible Girl, Coda. Coda, I'm not sure, but little Animal Boy does not get in. Yep, he's weak. He's too fodder to be in class 1A. At least Invisible Girl's power is kind of useful, I guess. Anyways, with that being said though, Deku would get in through recommendation, and we're actually going to skip on over to the perspective of our other heroine, Sonya Blade. Or more specifically, Melissa Shield. Of course. Oh, what's going on? If you guys hear that in the background, sorry about that. It should go away, but I'm not sure. Hold on. I'm just going to pause the video and come back when it goes away. Give me a second. Oh, actually, never mind. I'm going away. Anyways, of course, we're going to switch on over to the perspective of our other hero, Sonya Blade, or more specifically, Melissa Shield. She would be inside of the entrance exam as she starts to demolish robots. And of course, we're still actually going to... Actually, no, we're not going to have her be quirkless in this version. You know that those pink energy, blasts that Sonya Blade can shoot off with her gadgets? We're going to have it so that is actually Melissa's quirk. And in case you guys are wondering, yo, Zether, why are you changing your mind so much? This video is completely unscripted. I'm just going off top, just rambling. Come on now. Anyways, with that being said, though, she would go through and she would begin to demolish a bunch of the robots, as she would use her unparalleled martial arts skills to basically go through and demolish them. She would have actually gone through a little bit of military training with some recommendations from, her father, David Shield, who would have definitely put in a good word, and she would have had a lot of training and experience. Of course, she's gonna know our boy Kano. Anyways, she knows Kano, and she's going through the exam. Basically, the only part of relevance here is essentially that when Uraraka gets trapped, she actually rushes in there, takes the rubble off, grabs her, and shoots the robot so that it basically goes down. And actually, no, let's not say it goes down, but instead she actually just shoots the rubble off of her rock with her energy, and she proceeds to grab her as she runs away and says, "Let's go, soldier." As definitely got to give that personality. As of course she would grab her rock and she would say, "What?" As she would take her to Recovery Girl, and this is when we're now just gonna skip back over to Deku's perspective. At this point, let's say he's at 40%. Let's cut it over to 40% of One for All's full potential. Yes, 40%. Anyways, 40%. And of course, we're actually going to have it so that, he's going through his normal stuff, and he would end up going back to All Might's house, as he would end up crashing down, and he would end up grabbing a little bit of booze off of the shelf, as All Might would say, "What are you doing?" And Deku would say, "I'm trying to drink a little bit." As All Might would say, "Well, cool if I join you?" As Deku would say, "Yeah, sure, I don't see why not." And as for those of you who are like, "Yo, All Might would never allow that," bro, this is Johnny Cage Deku. He's drank before. Like, All Might would have already known this already. Like, he's seen him drink in his movies before, or what he thought was fake, but it was actually real. Anyways, with that being said, Deku and All Might would get absolutely hammered. And the next couple of days leading up to the UA school day would basically be them getting over their hangover. As we would then have Deku and All Might basically, knowing that Deku's going to get in. And we're just going to skip on over to the day where Deku actually goes to class 1A and walks inside. See, as soon as Deku takes one step in there, all of the 1A girls would end up staring towards Deku, as well as Ida and all of the rest of class 1A, guys, as they would look towards him and say, "Johnny Cage?" As, everybody would rush towards him, and they would begin to say, "I love your movies. Can I get an autograph?" They would start fangirling and fanboying over Deku, As of course, Minetta's over there just basically thinking, oh, you're so awesome. I wish I could get as many girls as you can. As of course, Deku would say, huh? And he would proceed to basically just keep going through the motions, just basically letting it all happen, seeing as he's kind of used to it. After a couple of minutes, Aizawa would have gotten extremely annoyed, and he would end up saying, if you're here to just annoy me, I suggest you all leave now. Take a seat and listen. As he would proceed, they would all proceed to sit down, and Deku would shrug his shoulders as he would go and take a seat. As Aizawa would proceed to basically say that that kid's going to be a problem, as he's definitely not going to let him sleep, as he would already have it out for Deku, and we would end up having, him basically telling them to go get suited up. As Deku would end up going to the changing room, and all of the UA girls would basically be drooling over Deku. They'd be like, did you see his other movies? Is he taken? Is he single? As we would then have another girl over there basically just scoffing, and she says, I don't see what you guys see in him. He's just a normal, normal kid like us. He's just a spoiled guy. As they would end up saying spoiled, and they would end up looking towards Melissa, as they would say, you take that back. As of course, a little bit of trouble would be, brewing up in the girls' locker room. As in the guys' locker room, however, we would have Kirishima looking at Deku as he would say, yo, dude, you're even more ripped in person than you are in the movies. How did you get so strong? As Deku would look towards him and say that over the past 10 months, he's been training like crazy. As he would say, no kidding, dude. How much powerful did you get? As Deku would say that, he'll find out if, they end up sparring someday. As Kirishima would say, understood. He'd say, I guess you don't want to reveal all your secrets just yet. As of course, we would then have them all go outside. Mineta would peek, but Deku would just kind of chuckle to himself and say that, if he really wants, he could help him get himself a girl. As Mineta would be like, you would? As he would drop down and begin to basically praise Deku, saying, all hail Deku, all hail Deku. As of course, we would then have everybody go outside. As Aizawa would actually end up throwing the ball towards Bakugo, seeing as he was actually the one who ended up winning, inflating Bakugo's ego, and since Bakugo never actually had anybody to check him, Bakugo's just as cocky and arrogant as he is in the original timeline. So no real change in terms of that department. Sorry, I meant department, partner. So yeah, with that being said, we would then have Deku looking towards Bakugo, as he would basically, look towards him as he grabs the ball, and Bakugo ends up throwing the ball at the same score that he actually got in the original. Actually, no, let's say 100 meters more, just because, he had a couple years extra to train his quirk up. And after he threw the ball, he would chuckle, thinking to himself that nobody's going to pass that. As Aizawa would then, look towards Deku and say, here, throw the ball. As Deku would catch it, and he would proceed to basically glare at Aizawa, seeing that he knows Aizawa already doesn't like him. As of course, we would then have Deku essentially, just grabbing it, as he would say, so am I allowed to go all out? And Aizawa would say, sure, just, don't hurt yourself too bad, pretty boy. As we would then have Deku, scoffing at that, with the UA girl saying, hey, don't talk to him like that. And Melissa would say, well, he's kind of right. As we would then have Deku basically noticing her finally, as he would end up saying, oh, would you look at that? You're looking pretty good, princess. As as he's walking over to the little circle that he's in, Melissa would end up looking towards Deku as she says, not interested. As Deku would say, wow. As the rest of the UA girls would basically get a little sad but happy, seeing as she rejected him, and they would keep basically staring at Deku on some Sasuke fangirls type stuff. As of course, Deku would walk up there and he would proceed to basically say that he's about to surprise them all and destroy that kid's score. As he would proceed to essentially grab the ball, as he would charge his energy through his arm, as well as full cowling, as he would throw the ball and say, here's Johnny, as he would throw the ball. And the reason he said that was because the girls actually asked him to scream that out loud, as they would have ended up basically being like, oh. It's beautiful. Anyways, we would then have Deku throw the ball about 2,000, no, that's not enough, 50,000 meters. Actually, no, that's a little too crazy. He would end up throwing the ball over to at about 3,984 meters, shocking everybody as they all just basically dropped their mouths to the ground, and they would proceed to look towards him as Deku would walk over, to the direction of Melissa, as he would wink towards her and say, so, what do you think now? She would proceed to basically just say, I guess you're not that bad. She would then proceed to scoff and then say, to basically get focused. As Deku would say, all right. As he would go over and a bunch of the girls would swarm him. As we would then have Deku basically looking towards their, Melissa's direction the whole time. Basically just looking at her, looking at her and saying he loves her personality. As, the girls would say, that's not what you like. As Deku would say, maybe not. But he'd say, she's definitely one of the best ones here. As, he would then look towards Momo, and he would proceed to say that, wow, she's actually not half bad either. As Momo would blush hard, and we would then have Todoroki basically looking towards that direction, saying that kid's such a show-off. As we would then have the rest of the people throwing the balls and getting their average scores within canon. Maybe, I guess you could say, like, a little bit more since they had more years to train. All the people who you guys think would get more points would get more, and the people who you guys believe would stay the same would pretty much stay the same. With that being said, though, UA is actually a college, and they're doing pretty well. Most of them all just barely graduated, and they're about 19 years old at this point. Of course, after this, we would then have the race, which Deku would use his shadow lunge to basically, blitz that thing, getting an even lower score than Ida, as well as using full cowling to have that energy around him basically change. Instead of basically just having it engulf his body like his original quirk did, instead it actually turns into crackling electricity, and it forms a little bit of a barrier around him that kind of protects him from most attacks. And of course, he would end up blitzing that, destroying the grip strength test, blowing up the side-to-side lunges using his shadow drive, I guess you could say, and he would just be going crazy, just destroying each and every single one of the tests. As after this, Deku would look towards Aizawa and he would proceed to say, so teach, got anything else for me? As we would then have Aizawa basically looking towards Deku as he basically just says, I guess the kid's not that bad after all. As, of course, we would then have Deku basically walking out, as Melissa would have actually been completely shocked with all of Deku's scores. Of course, she ended up getting second place, but he was so far ahead of her, it wasn't even funny. It wasn't even a joke. And Bakugo had his god complex ruined, as he would begin to think that if little pretty boy here thinks he can just come in out of nowhere and steal my thunder, he has something else coming. As of course, we would then have Deku basically trying to walk home, but he won't exactly be able to. See, all the girls in 1A would definitely be, doing their normal things, and we would then have Deku essentially just trying to basically get away from them all. As Deku would basically just stay around here, and he would end up just walking to All Might's house. As of course, we would end up having Deku basically not have anything to eat there, as he would say that he's gonna go get a bite to eat. As he would end up going to his local soba shop, and he would end up basically just ordering his favorite thing, cold soba, I guess is what it's called. As he would end up just basically eating, and this is when someone else would walk in, this being Melissa Shield. She would end up looking towards Deku and saying, oh, I didn't know you were here. As Deku would say, hey there, pretty little thing. As she would say, don't call me that, and Deku would proceed to say, all right, I won't. As they would look towards each other and they would begin to basically eat a little bit, as Deku would basically talk to her a lot and she would semi-ignore him, but she would end up giving in, as she would ask, so where is she from? As she would end up telling him that she's actually Melissa Shield, David Shield's daughter. And Deku would say, David Shield? Like the scientist? As she would say, yeah, that's my father. As Deku would say, looks like you're pretty popular as well. As she would say, yeah, but I don't boast about it. As we would then have Deku saying, giving me the cold shoulder, I see. As, she would look towards him and say, maybe. As Deku would say, well, I like girls that are hard to get. As we would then have him basically, leaning over to her, as she would proceed to basically push his head away. And we would then have, people who were there who actually recognized Deku saying, what? It's Izuku Midoriya. I mean, no, it's Johnny Cage. And the reason that you guys may all be like, yo, wait, aren't these movies in America? How would they even know, what's going on? And the reason for that is actually going to be that, well, I mean, it's called translation version. So, that's why. But anyways, with that being said, though, we would have Deku essentially trying to hit on, our girl Melissa, but he would kind of fail. And by the end of everything, she would end up telling Deku to just, get out of her way. As she would end up, leaving, and Deku would say that he'll pay for both of them. As he ends up putting the tab, and he would end up leaving off. As the very next day would come around, and this is actually going to be the day of the heroes versus villains. as we're actually going to be having Deku and Melissa versus Bakugo and Tokiyami. Bakugo and Tokiyami. Yeah, that's a set. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. That's gonna be a good matchup. Anyways, we're really honestly just gonna skip all the jibber jabber. Like, I am here, put it on this, cool costume. Put these on. Make the hero. No, we're skipping that. That's all relevant. Of course. And we're actually just going to go right on over to when they basically get suited up. As for what Deku's hero suit is gonna be, I want you guys to guess what his hero suit's gonna be. It's essentially going to be the Mortal Kombat 9 outfit that he wears with the little, the little, hand wraps and, the pants with the golden thing on it and, the glasses. Yes, that's essentially what Deku's going to be wearing. After all, it is Johnny Cage, Deku. Anyways, we would then have Deku basically going through the motions, going through the normal situations as in canon, and we would then have him basically seeing that his teammate is actually going to be Melissa Shield, as he would actually end up walking over to her and asking her what the plan is, as she would end up basically telling him that the plan is for him not to get in her way. As he would say, sheesh, that's a cold shoulder. As he would say, but if you want to win, you're probably going to need me, right? And she would say, I work alone. As she would end up walking inside, and Deku would basically just be tagging along behind her. As out of nowhere, you would then see a shadow appear out of nowhere as it hits Melissa down to the ground. And she would have actually barely been able to, dodge it a little bit, but it still would have knocked her down. As Tokiyami would then show himself, and Deku would say, what was that about you working alone? As, she would say, quiet. As she would end up trying to rush towards Tokiyami, but Tokiyami would end up, be able to holding his own up until she actually uses her energy blast, in which she actually ends up taking down Tokiyami rather swiftly. And she would say, as I said, I work alone. As Deku would end up saying, wow, not bad. As he would end up walking behind her, and they would end up walking over until they hear somebody screaming, Johnny! Blowing up explosions as he's, ravaging through the building. And, going through, doing his usual thing, doing exactly what you guys believe Bakugo would do. Bakugo would just be being Bakugo. Not gonna lie, guys, I kind of paused the video. I needed a drink of water, but I'm pretty sure I just said that Deku and her were walking and Bakugo said, Johnny! As, this is when Bakugo would run out the corner and, Melissa would actually, hold her ground. She gets his fighting position and she would shoot an energy blast at Bakugo, which Bakugo just ends up using his explosions to turn himself in an unorthodox position and then shoot an explosion point blank at her face that she was barely able to slightly dodge. So she slightly hit it, but most of it actually ended up hitting her with the brute force of it, as she would be sent crashing into the wall. And Bakugo would end up smiling as he says, finally, one-on-one. As Deku would say, hold on, I know you ain't just hit that beautiful girl. As Bakugo would say, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? As we would then have Deku saying, she's not going to be doing this fighting. As we would get into position and we would then hear, fight! You guys know the one. Anyways, Deku and, Bakugo would look down at each other as Deku would rush towards him using his energy, as he would basically only use his quirk, not even needing to use full cowling, as he would blitz Bakugo and send him flying into the wall, as Bakugo would get right back up and he would proceed to tell Deku that he can tell this is going to be fun, as they would get into a battle in which Bakugo is pretty much on the losing side. And this is when Bakugo would end up basically looking towards Deku as he says, you, as, he would end up trying to pull the pin. But before he even gets the chance to, Deku would drop down and do the splits, as he says, Nutcracker! And right as that happens, Bakugo falls to his knees as he begins to tear up. And he starts crying like a baby as he would say, oh! Of course, we would have Bakugo crying a little bit, and Deku would basically get up after that. After, of course, going to check up, on Melissa to see how she's doing, as she would say, thanks for that. And she would say maybe he's not as bad as she thought. As Deku would say, of course not. As we would then hear All Might saying, "Hero team wins," over the, the little comm thing that they have. As Deku would proceed to basically look towards her and say that, you know, they made a pretty good team. As she would say, huh. As Deku would say, "I'm serious. Maybe you want to try grabbing another bite to eat?" As she would say, "I don't remember ever doing that with you." As he would say, "Remember when we were at the same place?" And she would say, "Yeah, but you just annoyed me." As Deku would say, "Come on, give me a chance." As she would say, "Fine." And she would proceed to basically tell him where she wants to go eat today. And she would say, "Don't be late." As Deku would proceed to say, "Oh, I won't be." As we would then have Deku essentially going over there, he'd be dressing. He'd be dressing. He got the Zether outfit on. He got the jean jacket, the white shirt, the black pants, the forces. He dripping. He got the little watch on, little chain on and everything. And he dripping right now. As he would walk over to her and she would say, "Huh, a little overdressed, don't you think?" As he would say, "Just for you." As he would end up, sitting down, and they would end up talking a little bit. As this would actually go by great. Deku would have actually ended up, been able to get on her good side somewhat. And he would have actually ended up asking her to come over a little bit. As she would have said, "Not so fast. She's not some normal little girl that he can just, play around with." As she would say, he's going to have to work for that if that's what he wants. And she would proceed to say that if that's the only thing that he wants, he's going to give him the same treatment that he gave Bakugo. As Deku would just basically say, "No, that's that's not it. I don't want that." As she would say, "Good." As she would proceed to basically look towards Deku and give him a little bit of a kiss on a cheek. As we would then have Deku smiling, as he would end up just basically paying the bill, and they would end up basically going their separate ways. As this is when we're now actually just going to have Deku and Melissa slowly easing into getting to know each other, with Deku having to try really hard. And that's what Deku likes the most. He likes the thrill of the chase. And a chase it is. As, of course, we would have Deku basically going through being Mr. Popular at UA. But after all the girls saw that Melissa was with him, they would have ended up, slowly backing up. As they realized that if they mess with her, it's not gonna go too good for them. But anyways, with that being said, we would then have Deku essentially going through the motions, just normal classes for about a week, as well as training with All Might and Raiden after classes, with Raiden essentially talking to All Might and basically asking All Might to excuse Deku on the day of the USJ, seeing as Deku is one of the fighters for the fight. And he would actually end up asking All Might to join the tournament, as well as asking, Deku if he can ask that, Melissa Shield girl if she would be willing to get into it. As, we would then have Deku basically going through these things, and Raiden would end up recruiting a couple of extra members. These members, I'm just going to say, are, random, people that they would have ended up choosing in the original. Just the random warriors, and the main ones would, of course, be Deku, All Might, and, Melissa. As well as no, that's it. I don't want to make it too crazy. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Anyways, as I was saying, they would go through the motions, and in terms of the Outworld's perspective, we would then go over to where Shao Kahn is telling Shang Tsung that his warriors better win. And Shang Tsung would begin to tell Shao Kahn that all will be fine, to put his faith in him, as nothing bad will happen. As Shao Kahn would say that he hopes that for his sake it all goes smooth. As we would then have, Shang Tsung basically looking towards Shao Kahn, as they would end up wrapping up the conversation, and he would end up, basically talking to all of the members who basically agreed to come into the tournament, the Mortal Kombat. Not willingly, of course, seeing as he, kind of was going to take their soul if they didn't. Seeing as Shang Tsung, oh yeah, he's definitely way stronger than Overhaul or All Might or One for All. He's way beyond that level. And we're actually going to be doing the interpretation of Mortal Kombat 9, in which, he actually gets to fight Shang Tsung if he beats everyone else. With that being said, of course, we're going to be having the normal, things going on. Shang Tsung would be telling all the villains to basically get ready, seeing as it's going to happen soon. And, it's actually going to go down in about 1 month from now. At this point, Izuku's actually mastered about 45% of full cowling. and he's actually advancing very well in terms of how to use his quirk, as well as using One For All's power percentage and, his output. As of course, we would have, Deku going through these things until they are announced that they're actually going to be doing the what's it called? The USJ. Little joint, no, not joint training, but their little rescue training. As of course, they would all get on the bus, and people would begin to ask who they think is the strongest in the classroom. As Suyu and the rest of the girls would immediately say that it has to be Deku. I mean, did you guys see what he did to Bakugo? If you guys think that he's strong, just look at what he did to him. As we would then have a couple of the girls saying that Melissa is actually pretty strong as well. And they would proceed to say that Todoroki's actually not a slacker either. He took out his opponents with nothing but one sweep, freezing the building and touching the bomb. As they would end up debating whether Todoroki or, Deku's stronger. But at this point, we would actually have them all basically going into the USJ. As soon as they actually step inside, Deku would be wondering what's going on, as he just has a weird feeling about this. He can sense, I guess you could say, he can kind of get a little bit of a bad aura from this place, as he can just feel that something's off. And this is when Kurogiri would appear, as he would begin to teleport everybody away just like he does in the original canon. And of course, Aizawa would jump down there to basically help protect the students, as he would try his hardest to basically fight off some of the villains, with everybody getting teleported away to their usual locations. Of course, the boat situation would happen just as normal, up until the point where Suyu essentially throws them on the boat and asks them what their plan is. As Deku would explain the same plan that he did in canon, saying that he's going to throw a smash at the water, and that should most likely, get them good. As he would tell everybody to get ready, and Suyu would be ready for the plan. As they would jump on over, and this is when they would arrive back to land. As they would see Aizawa actually getting his head crushed in by the Nomu. As Deku would get a slight smirk on his face. As Suyu would see that and say, "What are you doing, Johnny? Why are you smiling?" As Deku would say that it's nothing. As he would proceed to tell her and Mineta to basically go off, that he's going to save him, no matter how much he doesn't want to. But he would proceed to jump in there, as he would see the Nomu, and he would then look towards Shigaraki, as he would say, "So, looks like we're going to have this happen." As, he would then jump on in there, doing a little bit of a front flip, as he would say, "Leave him alone," and he would proceed to throw a full power kick straight at the Nomu, sending him flying, crashing into the wall, as the Nomu would get up and go, okay, that was cringy. Anyways, Shigaraki would say, "Nomu, kill that brat." As we would then have Deku basically seeing the Nomu blitz him, as the Nomu would send a punch straight at Deku, which Deku was barely able to dodge. Something strange happened. It was as if he could sense the danger, and if some of you guys know what's going on, yes, well, he's actually going to be getting one of the abilities, since I actually think it's such a dope power. Anyways, with that being said, he would end up being able to dodge all of the Nomu's attacks, all of the Nomu's incoming attacks, and he would end up doing really weird, unorthodox movements that the Nomu isn't used to fighting against. As the Nomu would slowly start getting beat by Deku, because he uses his overall raw physical strength, and after about 30 hits, the Nomu would be sent flying out as he uses a 45% smash with his quirk, powering himself up so that it's basically the equivalent to All Might at 80%. As, he would send that thing flying out. And as soon as that happens, Deku would see Shigaraki angry as he scratches his neck and says, "This isn't fair. They cheated. They cheated." As, we would have Shigaraki doing his normal shtick, as he would look towards Kurogiri and say, "Kurogiri, we're getting out of here." As we would then have Deku basically going over there saying, "Not so fast," as Kurogiri would have a portal open up, and Shigaraki and himself would actually teleport out of there. As this is when they would have them both leave, seeing as they can't get caught, seeing as if they do, their master, their master of One For All, All For One, will actually have bad things happen to him. As let's just say that Shang Tsung came in, and when he actually introduced himself to All For One, he kind of made that man his bitch, seeing as he was nothing compared to All For One. He just copied him in appearance and ended up using his abilities, as he ended up taking down All For One. And All For One is pretty ain't scared of, our boy Shang Tsung. With that being said, though, we would then have the cleanup essentially going by normal, and 2 weeks would be the countdown before the Mortal Kombat tournament would begin. As Raiden would teleport onto the scene, and he would proceed to look around, as he would then see Johnny and Melissa. As this is when they would actually end up explaining everything to her. And as soon as all gets wrapped up, they would end up explaining what the situation is, as she would end up agreeing to joining it, seeing as she wants to save her planet. And she would actually end up basically asking why they don't recruit more of Class 1A's members, as they would say that it's none of their concern what happens, seeing as they don't want them to get involved in something that they know they can't handle. As we would then have Deku looking at Melissa, as he would nod his head, and Raiden would look towards them as he would say, right, you have 2 weeks left to train, and I'm going to be training you personally, Melissa. As for this next 2 weeks, we would have Raiden essentially training Melissa and what he needs to teach her. As in terms of Johnny Deku, he's basically learned all he can learn from him at this point. And, we would then have Deku spend these next 2 weeks basically working on One For All, as he ends up actually mastering 55% of full cowling during this time with All Might. And All Might would have ended up doing a little bit of training of his own, trying to get himself ready for this tournament. As instead of going over the USJ, not the USJ, but the school sports festival, we're actually going to have All Might basically and Raiden talk to Nezu, which basically leads to Nezu excusing Deku and Melissa from the UA sports festival, seeing as they actually have something that they have to do. They would end up being teleported to Outworld by, Raiden, and they would end up being at the tower, as they would be told that at the top will be the final opponent, and to take caution because these people are unlike anything they've ever faced before. As soon as they walk inside, the first fighter up would be All Might, as he would actually go through a bunch of the battles and actually relatively take down most of these people pretty easy. People such as Stain and Twice and all that, Toga, those people would be taken out with relative ease. But as soon as he got to people like Overhaul, this is when things started to change. Of course, Shigaraki hasn't exactly been fought yet, Kano hasn't been put in, but All Might was actually able to defeat Baraka. And by that point, Baraka would have actually ended up putting in real strong amount of damage in, as I'm actually only going to get into this fight. As soon as the battle started, All Might rushed towards Baraka, as he would have actually ended up sticking his claws out and he would have stabbed into All Might's injury and continued to slash at it, as All Might would have ended up basically losing due to blood loss. But before he would have actually ended up losing, he would have thrown one last final smash, and it would have ended up resulting in All Might winning and being in a critical condition, as he would have ended up punching Baraka's head right off, with Shang Tsung saying, "Fatality." As we would then have the rest of the battles go on, and Melissa would be up next, as her next battle was consisting of Shigaraki. As she would go up there, and in terms of who wins this, do I even need to get into this, bro? Man-child Shigaraki, not even manga tier, go against this version of Melissa, who was a total, bad ASS. I am saying that due to not getting demonetized, by the way, would end up, pretty much whooping this man Shigaraki. And Shigaraki would end up being taken down, as she would have ended up using her energy blast on Shigaraki's head, resulting in a flawless victory. Fatality. And this is when she would have actually ended up having to fight Kano. The battle would have been a long one, but it would have actually ended up resulting in a draw, in which Melissa and Kano were actually taken out. And this is when the last and final fighter of, Earthrealm would be up next. Johnny Cage. As we would look towards him, and he would begin to smile, as Shang Tsung would say that all hope is all but lost for them. As he would say that these next couple of fighters are going to be the strongest. As at this point, Shang Tsung has absorbed the souls of all of the people who pretty much lost already, and Deku would end up fighting against the next couple of people, such as Rideshro, his first fighter. Deku would charge up full cowling as soon as the battle begun, as we would have Deku lunging towards Rideshro, as Redestro would begin to grow in size, as he would end up throwing his arms at Deku trying to punch him. But due to Deku's increased speed and agility, he would end up basically dodging all of his blows, and with one good hit, he would have ended up knocking Redestro down to the ground. As Shang Tsung would tell Deku to finish him, as Deku would actually not be able to do that. He would say that he's not going to do it, as Shang Tsung would say, "Very well then," as he would say, "Your soul is mine," and he would proceed to basically devour Redestro's soul, only increasing his power more and more. And during this tournament, Deku would have ended up gaining a little bit more experience, as he would have ended up going up to 51% full cowling, as the next battle would actually consist of Overhaul versus Deku, as Overhaul would actually be an opponent that's extremely hard to face against. But before Deku could even fight him, one of the fodder members of the tournament would have actually gone up to him, and he would have ended up getting overhauled by him. And Deku would have realized what Overhaul's quirk is, knowing that he needs to stay away from that at all costs. So this battle would basically be Overhaul trying to use the spikes in the ground to take him out, with Deku basically throwing nothing but energy balls at not Shang Tsung, but Overhaul, as a couple of them would have ended up landing, and after about 4 or 5 of them, he would have ended up being taken out. Also, sorry if you guys can hear for those of you who know who that is, the elotero, he manages grinding, you feel me? Might go over there and cop myself something from him later. But anyways, with that being said, we would then have Deku basically taking out Overhaul, as that battle would actually be pretty easy for Deku. It'd be a little drawn out, but easy nonetheless, seeing as it only took him 4 energy balls, fully charged by full cowling, and seeing as he has danger sense, he was able to dodge every attack relatively easy, as we would then basically get on over to more of the more powerful opponents, such as All For One. As soon as the battle starts, All For One would throw the gigantic attack that he was actually going to use against All Might in their battle right at Deku, as Deku would barely be able to dodge it, and he would end up basically holding his own against him, as the wind pressure would have been enough to blow him out of the way, and the battle would go on raging, as All For One would use all and any of his quirks, but Deku, using his danger sense, would be able to dodge most close combat attacks and most energy attacks, as he would have thrown a bunch of energy balls at him, and he would have used attacks such as the shadow kick, and he would have ended up actually resorting to using a very strong and powerful punch, would have actually screamed out, "Texas Smash!" seeing as he kind of wanted to honor All Might, as All Might would have ended up dying. The blood loss was too much and they weren't able to save him, but Deku can basically continue to have the mantle of the #1 hero, or the memory of All Might live inside him, as he would end up destroying All For One. And this is when we would then have Deku essentially going through the next couple of battles just like normal, facing some other people such as Stain and all the rest of them. But seeing as they're nothing to him at this point, they would have been nothing but fodder for Deku to handle. And these battles would have resulted in really boring battles, actually. They would have really offered no real entertainment to the story, other than kind of just Deku going through and body slamming all of these people. And this is when we're actually going to get to the battle that I'm pretty sure all of us were waiting for. Johnny versus Gorill. At first, Deku would decide that he's gonna basically pace himself, as he would use his energy power, but Gorill this time would have actually ended up being way stronger, as he would have ended up landing a couple of blows on Deku, and after getting hit by that, Deku would have realized that he cannot afford that, as Deku would basically look for a weakness, and he would go down on both legs, as he would do a splits and say, "Here's Johnny," as he would throw the hit straight at his his area, and Gorill would fall to the ground, as Deku would then jump up into the air and kick him down to the ground, as Shang Tsung would say, "Finish him." And Deku, after everything that had happened, would have ended up looking towards him, as he would have charged up an energy ball and shot it straight at Gorill's head, blasting it off. And he would end up grabbing a trophy that he would have actually ended up winning from the previous battles, and smashed it into Gorill's head, or where Gorill's head used to be at, as he would say, "Fatality." And throughout this entire battles, these battles would have actually ended up improving, Deku's full cowling percentage, actually now being able to use 55%. And the final battle would be upon us now. Shang Tsung versus Deku. The battle would be a great one. The battle would begin with Shang Tsung essentially looking towards Deku after he defeated Gorill, as he would say, "Enough! Your final opponent will be me." As we would then have Deku saying, "What?" And Shang Tsung would then basically teleport them off to a different location, which Raiden cannot get to. As, oh wait, no, Raiden can't even get to Outworld in the first place. Let's just say that retcon what I said with, you know, them fighting in Outworld. They were actually fighting in, you know, the Earth realm in like a big tower. Same thing as, you know, what happened. No, nothing really changed its locations. And Shang Tsung would have actually ended up teleporting Deku away. At this point, his power would have grown exponentially. And as soon as the battle started, Shang Tsung would have instantly turned into Deku, as he would have rushed at him, and he would have ended up trying to use all of Deku's attacks. But seeing as Deku has this danger sense ability, he would have been able to dodge most of the blows, and he would have ended up being able to counterattack, with Shang Tsung transforming to every single different opponent that there is, and he would end up transforming into his mother, as Deku would say, Mom? As Shang Tsung would say, "Yes, it's me. I'm alive again." As Deku would say, I missed you so much." As he would walk up to Shang Tsung, and Shang Tsung would smile, as he would think that he has this in the bag. He would begin to charge his arm up, as he would charge up an attack. But before Deku could, you know, basically approach Shang Tsung, he would say, "I'm not done," as he would drop down to the ground and hit Shang Tsung in the special area, using the Nutcracker to send him flying into the air of how much force he used. And he would have actually ended up punching straight through Shang Tsung, his arm going straight through and cracking through a bunch of ribs, resulting in a fatality. As after that would have happened, we would then have Deku basically, you know, basically going down, as he would say, "I did it." As he would be drained of all of his energy at this point. And this is when Deku would basically go around wondering how he's even going to get home. As we're going to just have it so that Plot would have it and Raiden would end up teleporting him back. As Melissa would basically look towards Deku and say that he did it. He saved Earthrealm. As Deku would basically say that, yeah, he did. And this is where we're going to be ending this story off, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed What If Deku Was Johnny Cage, seeing as this story was actually pretty fun. In case any of you guys are wondering, yo, what ended up happening with Deku and, you know, Melissa, they would have ended up having Cassie Cage, and she would have actually ended up becoming a pro hero, getting the ability of One for All as well, and being even more broken than her father ever could be. With, you know, Takeda and the rest of them being born. Not, you know, not in the same families like Shira, Ryu and all that, but, you know, just people with quirks that are similar to that. Takeda having a teleport quirk, which basically helps him do the abilities in the Mortal Kombat 10. And, you know, Deku would have gotten older with, you know, our version of Sonya Blade being Melissa's shield, as that's essentially how this story goes. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button, seeing as 50% of you guys actually aren't subscribed. And, you know, if, you know, why not do it? It's free. And if you don't like the channel later on, you can always unsubscribe. But with that being said, guys, go ahead and drop a like down below. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. But as you guys know, it has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.